Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life, and welcome into the new year. We're doing a month of January podcasts focusing on the topic of confidence, self-confidence, and all confidence things. So we are always so happy to include Pixie in our talks. So welcome, Pixie. Glad you're here. Back at the
Oh, thank
podcast with Laurel and I. We love it when you're here.
Oh no, I love it even more.
So, our topic with Pixie today, for all of you out there who may be not wanting to get out of your comfort zone or maybe responding to fear in ways that is really holding you back, this topic's for you today. So, our topic is, are you playing it safe? And we're just going to dig right in because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can talk about on this one, but we're just going to go wherever the flow takes us, as we always do. And I'm going to invite Pixie to kick us off if she has anything she wants us to start right in on, because she's
Yeah.
always got great ideas for us.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but it's certainly fun to think about. As usual, this topic came up, with Laurel kind of spontaneously. We were in a car and she was talking about abundance and how she was thinking about that and the opposite, scarcity. And we both just kind of said, yeah, abundance has nothing to do with money. Living abundantly, has everything to do with just living life as it is right now, as if nothing is lacking. I think that's where we landed.
I think it is.
Nothing's lacking today, nothing's lacking tomorrow. So there's nothing to fear. There's no anxiety. There's no worry, And so I think it was Laurel, probably Laurel said, yeah, living abundantly is just not living scared. It's not playing scared. It's not playing it safe. And as usual, Laurel and I kind of look at each other and go, podcast.
Yeah.
And then I think what happened is I shared a story about a very impactful friend of mine. I'll just name him Bobby for convenience. And Bobby was a full of life friend. He was also a huge gambler. And a typical Friday night for Bobby was winning or losing $35,000.
Wow.
And yeah, so I remember kind of going, wow, Bobby, how can you do that? It blew my mind. And I said, how do you do it? And he said, I don't play scared. You can't play scared.
Mm.
And it's a game. I do it for the love of the game. That's what he said. And I thought, wow, that is a metaphor for life. You can't play scared. And so, I thought about that. It was one of those impactful kind of, turn right, get off the path, aha moments. And I thought about Bobby because he did live life like he played poker. He was wide open. He never held anything too tight. Nothing, anything, money. It came, it went. He wasn't attached to anything that was going to take away life. He was just as willing to get things as he was to lose them. And he was authentically Bobby, no matter if he had millions, which he had. Sometimes he used to just flash me C-bills and I'd be like, but he also got down, I remember putting gas in his Range Rover, because he was that down. He lost it all. And darn if he didn't bounce back and get it back. He never questioned it. He never played safe. He was 100% in the game of life, exploring new ideas, always experimenting, always creating, always inspiring. And Yeah, so obviously that's an extreme personality, and I'm not saying that we all need to go modulate ourselves after Bobby. But I do think there's something we're thinking about, and the questions I think that come out right away for me is, why do we play it safe? Where do we play it safe? And what do we give up when we play it safe?
Yeah, yeah. You know what was coming up for me, Pixie, was when we're playing it safe, I guess the question, maybe the first journaling question we can introduce here, on the show today is, what limitations are you placing on yourself and your life and what the possibilities are? Yeah, that was kind of like, it was like playing it safe is self-chosen, whether you're conscious of it or not, they're self-chosen limitations. Yeah. How about
They
you,
are.
Laurel? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about the question of what importance do we put on what we currently have, right? Because whenever we're playing it safe, we're doing it as a protection mode because we're afraid of losing what we already have. And I think it does go back to the faith of, if we have it, we will always have it. Whether we lose it today, we'll get it back, right? Like just being comfortable knowing, what is meant for us is already ours, right? That saying of, and so how can you trust that whatever it is you want that you don't currently have, you're not risking, it doesn't require you to give up what you have. It just requires you to, I guess, loosen your grip on the control of what you have.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Don't hold on too tight, because I remember Bobby saying that, you can't hold on too tight. Boy, is that true. And I think that's pretty affirming by the Buddhists too, where they don't attach. Laurel mentioned two things that I think are really key here. One is, you mentioned fear. And two is, you mentioned trust. And so when we're scared, we don't trust, and we play it scared. Yeah, and it's funny because I think about this like it's almost like fear puts us in a cave. You can plant a tree, and I always think of trees. You guys know I love trees, but you can plant a tree in a cave, and it's going to do fine for a while, and then it's not going to grow. It's not going to blossom, and it's not going to ever reach its potential. And there's just no room for tree life in a cave. And I think that's good. I mean, we have to go in a cave sometimes. I mean, metaphorically, obviously, but I mean, it could be a lightning storm, or a lion could be lurking behind the tree. And I think for an immediate threat, it's important to seek protection. But I think what happens to us is we hold on to that lightning and that lion, that fear, and we let it affect today. I mean, sometimes we hold on to that for 20, 30, 40 years when it's not even there. We need to get out of the cave and go into the sun, feel the wind, and live the present moment without that 20, 30, 40-year-old hostage fear that puts us in the cave.
Yeah. Yeah. And, coming into this topic of confidence, right? And how this all plays out together is, how do you build confidence in yourself if you're not testing your limits, right? If you're not pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, if you're not wondering, what else is there for me if I'm not happy or fully satisfied with where I am right now, right? And then how can I confidently, even if I may be a little afraid, still say, I'm going to move forward and try something new, or get outside what I normally do so I can feel something and experiencing something new and different. Yeah.
It is so interesting. What just came up for me is, when I think about all the game shows that used to be on television, right? This was decades ago, right? But the game shows where the contestants were asked to wager think about Jeopardy. They're asked to wager some, a dollar figure that they've amassed during the show in order to get something more, right? And how many of them were always willing to not do that, right? Just to hold on. They're going to hold what they have, right?
Yeah.
Rather than risking it for something greater. And I do think that that's somewhat of our conditioning of, especially, I think a lot about the American dream, right?
Yeah.
The home, the possessions, the car, and we work for those things, and we collect those things, and then we get stuck in those things. A couple of years ago, I really, I like to move. I like change. And I've been in a house now for 20 years, almost 20. And I am itching to move. And a couple of years ago, was ready and willing to sell everything I owned and just move. And one of my good friends was like, how could you do that? You loved those things when you bought them, right? But I really thought, well, how do you make room for something more in your life while you are carrying, all of the baggage or the belongings of something else? And I think we do that also with our identity. It's who we were at former stages of our lives, and being who we were, or holding on to who we were, keeps us safe and keeps us from growing into more that we could be.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. How kind of holding on to that self-definition through whatever roles you've had or experiences you've had, and not being willing to, put that down for a little while and say, well, who am I if I'm not those things, which is always such a great exercise, right?
And usually for me personally, who I used to be was in survival mode. And that made me feel safe, emotionally and mentally. If I, thought of others first, if I looked outward, I was super vigilant, hypersensitive, constantly always looking for the threats, not the lions, but the things that were going to prevent me from feeling like I belonged, or successful, or whatever. And the coping strategies, one of them obviously is to play it safe. Don't be too vulnerable, don't be too inauthentic, or authentic. And then it helped me in a way. But I think that the new identity that I edge towards every day is to get out of that survival mode, and playing it safe goes with that, and move into more of a thriving. When I think of thriving, I think of creativity, and I think of inspiration, and I think of new ideas and growth, blossoming in the cave. So it's kind of a shift. It's funny because I asked 10 people. Obviously, it's not random because I know them, so it's certainly not a random sample. But I said, hey, what does it mean to feel safe? And do you know, most of them, if not all of them's first reaction was locking my doors. My alarm system. One of them said, I carry a gun. She had a concealed gun permit. And so it was seeking protection. It was seeking physical, still kind of in our 500,000 years ago, physical safety. And after I would say to them, well, what about like more broad, emotional safety and mental safety? And it was kind of like, oh, and then it was so fun to hear them talk about playing it safe in relationships, playing it safe with themselves, playing it safe in church. Then they were rolling. And it was interesting to hear them move out of the survival safety into what it would look like to thrive. Yeah.
I feel like emotional safety is such a big one in our culture. I don't know, where are you guys with that? Because I do feel like that's a driving factor for so many people. And I think part of it has to do with the level of trauma and anxiety that people are living with today, that, to take a risk is more emotional, maybe more emotional energy, or, putting ourselves in a place where we need to emotionally expand, so to speak, to hold a situation that may make us feel more nervous or may make us wonder, can I handle this? Right. And that comes back to, how else are you going to build confidence if you don't know by actually doing it? Right. That's how we build our confidence. Is, you learn how to be a competent person in the world. Tie your shoes, make your bed, get your breakfast by yourself, like all these things. And it's the same when we're older. I mean, we don't really get confident until we go out and actually do the thing, right?
Yes. And what's coming up for me is thinking about the comparison, right? As my neighbors and friends, do things under the, to keep themselves safe or to protect themselves. How many people, or do I wonder, oh, they've got a home security system that looks at every nook and cranny of the inside and the outside of their home. Do I need that? Should I have that to keep myself safe? And so, it makes me think about the comparison. Like, how can we build safety, the emotional inner safety, and trust that we're safe without having to compare ourselves to others, right? And then the other thing that, not just the comparison of, oh, should I be doing that too? Is the world really that unsafe? If 10 people think the world is unsafe and I don't, am I the crazy one, right? And so and it reminds me of the judgment of others, right? When we see someone that lives, I love to say lives out loud, right? When we see someone that lives out loud, whether they spend money or they gamble or they drive fast in their car, whatever it is that they are pushing the limits on, where is my judgment of them? Right. And it's so interesting to think about that. When Pixie was saying, that if you used the word too, right? If they are too whatever the adjective is, too adventurous, too risk comfortable, I don't know, I think, is that a good indication if someone tells me I am too whatever it is? Should I be leaning into that? Should I be trying to be too loud? I don't know.
That's a good question. Well, and again, just to follow that thread, if somebody says you're too X, Y, and Z, right? Right off the bat, what are they comparing you to? What are you being compared to that is making maybe them uncomfortable, or it's outside their comfort zone?
Yes.
So they're asking you to come back into their comfort zone, right?
And I think about this, if I ever say, oh boy, that person is crazy, it really is a good indication to me that there's something inside me that would like to be a little bit more. And that person is exhibiting more. And I'm thinking they're crazy.
Well, I think it comes down to the importance of contrast too. I mean, when you play it safe, you're limiting thought, you're limiting diversity, you're limiting challenging experiences. And we all know that it's diversity and contrast and challenging experiences that put us further along in our growth. I mean, I could name 5, 6, 7 huge challenges in my life. And I thank God for those challenges every day because of the growth that came out because of the contrast and and the pain and the challenges. So, I actually have kind of two stories relating to this. One is, so I saw Barbie.
Yes.
Um,
Love the Barbie movie.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And of course I called Laurel up on the way home. I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta go see this movie. Oh my gosh. And I went with an attitude. I didn't want to go. I just happened to tell a friend I'll go with her. She wanted me to go, wanted a companion. I'm like, this is gonna be so stupid.
Mhm.
And I didn't mind, cheap matinee price. I'll go with you. And I loved it. I loved it. And it hit me so deeply at so many levels. And one of the levels it hit me was, Barbie was playing it safe and she was living in a utopia and everything was perfect, and no contrast, no diversity. Everybody was successful. Everything was beautiful. No anxiety.
Every day was the same.
Yeah, no anxiety, no,
That's right.
nothing. It was just a beautiful utopic life. And then, she had a thought, which we don't have to get into, but she realized that she was going to die, and as all humans do, and kind of an existential exploration, which we could talk about, but we don't need to. But the bottom line is that she figured out that living and learning to love in an unsafe world was a whole lot more fun than living and loving in a utopic safe world. And so she ended up, not to spoil the movie for anybody that hasn't seen it, but she ended up leaving Barbie Land and living in the real world, the unsafe world, because it was so much more fun, more spontaneous, more creative, more inspiring, more, yes, challenging. But she felt alive. She was growing. And so, that movie
Yes.
was just Bobby. It's like
it's the story. I mean, it's the story of how we can feel more alive if we're willing to step outside, what we're comfortable with and what we already know about. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and let's talk for a minute about how when we grow up as children, I'm going to say, at least for me, the geographic territory that I could explore expanded as I aged, right?
Yeah.
And so when I think about this, we were allowed to ride our bikes to a certain stop sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't allowed to cross a certain street, right? But then, middle school, we can walk 1.5 miles to school. We can start to high school. I can ride my bike for 20 miles, right? But still, like, all of those safety barriers are given to us along our way, right?
Yeah.
Even when I went to college, I remember thinking about, there were 3 programs I was looking at the time. But it was a 4-year paralegal program approved by the American Bar. There was one in Nashua, New Hampshire, an hour away, where I had never been in my entire life. One in Philadelphia and one in Phoenix. And Phoenix and Philadelphia were so far away, so far out of my comfort zone. I could not even imagine how that was plausible, right? Going an hour away.
Yeah.
Now the world I live in, an hour away is nothing. I had never been to this place an hour away from home.
Yeah.
And even that was a stretch of my safest zone, if you will.
Yeah.
And some of it, really came from my parents' safe zone, right? And so I think about this a lot. Like, I use the word wobbly a lot now in my vocabulary. Wobbly to me means when I'm feeling a little less than sure-footed, right? I'm a little wobbly. But when I'm feeling wobbly, I know I am on the verge of growing and learning.
Yeah. I love that you I feel like introducing the topic of how do we begin to grow our safety internally, right? And that happens by having limitations that we're in, that we recognize we can keep oh, I can keep safe in this limitation. I can keep safe in this limitation. And then I keep expanding that out and out and out until I realize I can keep myself safe in all situations. Now, I'm not talking about stepping out into the world and then, we know there are a lot of things going on in the world today where things can suddenly happen, and we could have prepared ourselves in no way for it to keep ourselves safe in that situation. We know that. So I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is more the everyday, right? As we are growing and learning, right? How we can build a safety from within so that we feel like we can step into any new situation and go there with some level of confidence that says, I can do this, or I can learn how to do this well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, and if we are not, doing that for ourselves, right? I mean, it's interesting to think about as children grow up, children are always pushing the boundaries, right? But here we are adults and nobody's telling us we can't. But we don't push the boundaries for ourselves. And so that's an interesting kind of thing for me to think about. It's like, where should I be pushing my own boundaries? Bringing curiosity and inquisition. Go ahead, Pixie.
Great.
Yeah, and what are you missing when you don't? But I think there's a little bit of an element of acceptance for it's okay not to push them. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I had another man in my life. He just recently died. He made it to the age of 93. And he played it safe. He was extraordinarily cautious for 93 years. Grew up, born in 28, so grew up in the whole era of industrialization and commercial capitalism and all through the 90s.
Yeah.
All through the 90s. And, he did well. But he was extremely, extremely homebound, played it safe. Family meant the world to him. Never had a desire to venture out of Mechanicsville, Virginia. Yeah. And that's okay. I think what I would like to say is to honor the desire within. And if you have the desire within, trust it. It comes back to what Laurel said. Don't poo-poo it. Don't just become aware of, that was an inspiring idea. Wow. Oh, okay. What am I afraid of? What's resisting that idea? Maybe that idea is meant to push me into a new area. Or in my friend's case, the 93-year-old, maybe he didn't have the desire in this life to, and
that's so, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, let's not say that it's all or none and it's always best to, go out on the edge. Everybody's kind of got their line, like there's some people that when they had this conversation, they would probably go, oh yeah, you got to jump out of an airplane, Well, no, I'm not jumping out of an airplane. That's my line.
It can't make me.
I'm not doing it. I'm not riding in a hot air balloon. I don't care,
And I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, that's really important.
But if you sense a longing, if you have a longing to do something more or different, right? And it might be leaving a situation that you no longer want to be in, but it's so safe for you to stay there because that's what you're expected to do, right? Or that's all you've ever done. But if you have a longing or a desire and it's other people's opinions, or it's, if you sense that there's something holding you back, right? I mean, anytime that someone uses the word wish, right? Should, could, and wish, those are, when I use those words, I use them as clues that I want something different. And why Why can't I not, or why am I not turning the wish into am, right? Like, often hope, right? When we hope something is different, that's a clue for me that I need to move into some action and really to start reflecting on what's keeping me from taking the action.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honoring the desire and then writing down the resistance. What is it within us? And sometimes it's easy, and sometimes I would probably say most often it's deep. It comes down to some sort of deep underlying fear, whether it's fear of money, fear of dying. It's usually a pretty existential, deep thought.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I know that, I know one of the conundrums for a lot of people in the world today, or has been, I don't know if it is, because I think, things are changing a lot out there in the world, but, like staying in a job for a really long time because it was safe, because they knew it, because, I was on a path of saving for my retirement. And if I left this job, I might have to take less pay, and I don't want to take less pay because this is the track I need to, there's a lot of storying around why I have to stay where I am and why I have to keep going with what I'm doing, even though I don't like it anymore, or don't feel like, it's really serving my inner spirit, so to speak, And so I think that, for anybody who's struggling with that, right, is to, to be willing to look at it like, are the sacrifices that you're paying, right, worth whatever it is that you think you're getting from it? And I think that that's such a personal decision for each one of us. I mean, ultimately,
Yeah, it comes down to what are you giving up? What are you giving up when you play it safe? And, Laurel knows this. I just moved out of the city. I moved from this really eclectic, diverse, just amazing community in the city, 1929 house. It's just total creativity, arch ceilings, everything. And I moved into a new community, brand new homes, with an HOA, very safe. Make sure that house next to you cuts their lawn before it's 12 inches,
and 4 inches really, but go ahead.
Yeah. In this community, yeah, you're right. 4 inches is too long. So, a lot of safety, a lot of security. And I'm not beating myself up. It was a decision I made, probably for more right reasons than not. So there's no self-sabotage here. But I think what I didn't know when I moved into this community is what I was giving up. When you move into a safe and secure, controlled community, yeah, you get clean. And yeah, I don't have to lock my house or even my car. But you get the same wreath on every black front door. You get, the same people walking down the street that look like you in your Patagonia sweatshirts, walking their designer dog, and, after they just played a round of golf or tennis. So, and I'm not knocking that, obviously I do those things, but, the contrast is lost. Yeah. And the diversity of thought and the challenging ideas and that kind of thing is sacrificed in the name of safety. Was it a good idea for me? Probably, because I'm getting to an age where it's, safer to not be confronted with those kind of challenges that are hard to do alone. But again, it's the question of what am I giving up? And it's the inspiration and the creativity that you give up.
Well, it's really interesting. Yeah. So one of the things that I want to say, and Laurel, hold your thought because I want you to go there, was sometimes we don't know what we're giving up, right? Sometimes it's like, I don't know what I'm giving up. And so I'm going to stay the course, right? Because I don't know, I can't see beyond what I have already experienced or already know about. And that's why, when we're talking about this topic in particular, right? And the confidence building and the what is right for you, it really comes back to those inner impulses of what is it that I really want? What is the longing or the desire in me that's not yet been fulfilled, or that I feel like I'm looking at somebody else and going, well, I kind of want that too. Why? I mean, I don't think I don't know. I don't think I can do it, or I'm afraid to do it, or it doesn't seem like me. But if you want it, it's for you. It's whether you're willing to like take the risk of going out there and seeing what version of that is for you. What would your story look like if you went after that thing? Right. Yeah.
And that was along the lines of what I was thinking, is that, sometimes you don't know what you are giving up until you try something new. Right. But here you were, Pixie, in this example, living something different, wanting something else. Right.
Right.
And so you move into the something else, and now you can see the something else in a different light, in a different perspective, because you are in it. You're not hoping for it or longing for it, right? And then, so I think when I think about, playing it safe and the self-limitations that we put the boundaries on ourselves. And so now you've experienced both. You're experiencing this new lifestyle, this new home, this new community. You have time to decide, is this for me? Is this not for me? And then I would challenge, and I challenge all my clients with this. How can it be and both, right?
That's right.
Rather than either or.
Yeah.
So now you're in this new community, and you have some of the benefits of safety and community. And you may look at the things you've given up as disadvantages, but you can have those too.
Exactly. Yeah, we talk, Laurel and I talk, we talk a lot about living in the conjunction of and.
Yes, and both.
Yeah.
And so I do think, it's a question of, when I think about each individual, all of our listeners, and even the three of us, that sense of, if you are sensing that you're meant for something more, or there's more for you to experience in this lifetime, and you feel that, you sense that, and you're ignoring that because of fear, then that's where I would say the problem is.
Yeah, the fear is big. And the other thing I think people play it safe is because they don't, or I sometimes think that I got to take that bold step. But really, you don't have to take that major bold step. You can just take that one step in that direction towards your impulse or towards your desire or whatever is motivating you to make a change. Take a step.
Yes.
And see how it feels, and then take the second step and see how it feels, and not that bold moves aren't beneficial in their own right. Sometimes I think we need the bold moves too. I mean, as a 17-year-old, I boldly told my mother I'm not going to college, and I moved to Sweden. And that's a bold move.
It's a really bold move.
And I'm glad, that was a pretty big confidence thing. I mean, sometimes the way I look at life is yin yang. So sometimes the bolder of the moves is when you get the bigger growth, or the bolder of the moves is where you build the most confidence, or whatever. And so there's just varying degrees, I think, that are appropriate at different kind of stages.
And there's different, there are varying degrees of what a bold move is. And so here I'm listening to you say your bold move was telling your mother that you weren't going to college and you were moving to Sweden. My bold move at 17 was telling my mother I was going to college and I was going an hour away. That was bold, right? In the world I grew up in.
Right.
Neither of my parents went to college, right?
What great example. Those two examples side by side are such great examples of the breadth of what we're talking about and the possibilities of all that we're talking about. So we have to wrap up, ladies, but I'm thinking about,
Darn.
I know for our listeners, like here we are, it's early in the year as we, send this show out to you. My invitation, and I want to invite you to include any other journaling prompts you have. But my invitation would be, get a fresh journal, and maybe have it be your desire journal. Where you're just keeping track of what every day, what comes up in you that you want, that maybe you just put aside and you don't really follow the impulse of, to try to start even acknowledging that, there may be places where you're playing it safe, or there may be places where you're ignoring what your inner being really wants to have and grow into. And the only way that we discover that, right, is by first listening, right, from within, and acknowledging those impulses and not quickly setting them aside or silencing them, So that would be my kind of journal prompt, for folks. Anything?
Yeah.
How about you?
I would add one, be mindful, or to our listeners, pay attention to when someone else does something and your reaction is either they're crazy or I could never do that. And really start to ask yourself, especially the I could never do that, right? Maybe you admire someone for quitting their job and selling everything they own and living in an RV, and you think, I could never do that. Ask yourself why. Why?
I would add honoring your desire for sure with 3 exclamations. Sometimes that desire comes in a funny way. Sometimes it comes in jealousy.
Yeah.
If you find yourself jealous of somebody going to Europe on a bike, well, that's telling you that you might have a desire to go to Europe and ride a bike.
Yes.
And so honor those desires, that they come in many, many different ways. The other thing that I would also journal about is, getting in touch with what it is that's making you play safe, your fears. And I would throw this out to listeners. Sometimes it's okay. It's okay to honor the fear of heights for me. It's okay that I'm never going to jump out of an airplane, or that it's okay that I'm not going up in a hot air balloon. That's a fear that I'm honoring. And I don't need to get over and get out of my comfort zone and do it.
Yep.
It's okay to become aware and honor sometimes, your fears. And
yeah. Or to just say, that's not for me, and be okay with that. I mean, I feel like I know the things that aren't for me. I mean, they just don't send that impulse. Here's what I will say as we close out the show is, if you look at somebody and you go, wow, they're so excited about that. And even if you don't want that thing, but you're jealous of their excitement, that's what you're chasing, right? Is the feeling of excitement and joy. And for us here on the show, I would say, our revolution that we are trying to instigate in the world today, right, is the revolution of feeling more joy, more excitement, and less fear.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of fear being promoted out there and being used in a lot of ways to influence people. And personally, I think it's gotten out of hand. It's really unhealthy. So, we're on the we're on the revolution of joy and excitement train over here.
A great idea.
Invite you onto the train with us. Yeah.
Yes. I have just 2 quick thoughts, and I know we need to wrap up. But often we get lost in the how. When we have this longing, we have a thought. We have something that might excite us, and right away our brain goes towards how. So I want to encourage our listeners, do not get stuck in the how. How is not the question. The question is why. Maybe the question is what, right?
Yeah.
What else, right? Why not? Those are the questions, not the how. And then we've talked about this book before, but I want to just mention it in this episode, is a book called Playing Big by Tara Mohr, Mohr. It's a great book. And it talks about why women keep ourselves small.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good to start looking at, what is the fear? What's the why? Why are we keeping ourselves small? And for whom are we keeping ourselves small?
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you. And thank you, Pixie, for being with us today for another great conversation. We love it when you're in the house.
Yes,
much-
always.
So
Yeah.
much fun.
So
Yeah.
much fun. All right, off we go for now. We'll be back for more beautiful work, beautiful life next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.